Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Shoes. Welcome to the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo here in Planet Zoo on our franchise mode. We are back at things today, but this time we are building our staff center. We already have two species of animals in our zoo, so therefore we need to finally figure out what we're doing at the front of our park. So therefore we are making our staff center today, and we are going to make it look much nicer than just a bunch of weird looking walls. So therefore, we are building with a certain style today. This style is going to be very much like our style where our giant pandas are, because we want to make sure that there's not this weird difference between styles between these two areas. Now, the whole point of this staff center is that there's not much room to move these buildings. We just built a pond right next to the staff center in between both the building and the habitat. There's really not much space. So therefore, we don't have that much space, and what the game wants us to do is they want us to hide these staff centers because they don't want the guests to see them and be like, why the heck can we see all these buildings? So therefore, we end up doing something very simple, and we just make it look like they're meant to be there. So with that being said, we have to transition the area from our staff area over into our guest area. So what we end up doing is we end up decorating these buildings very nice so they don't look out of place, but also at the same time we make it seem like they're meant to be there in some regard. So we end up making some nice gardens toward the staff path area, which was the intention of this idea. So we end up building one of our main gardens at this left building here. I end up doing both these buildings differently, but on the left side we do have a nice garden, and on the right side building we are not going to be using as nice of a garden for the area, and I'll show you why later and you'll understand why. But we end up using the same building materials as we do with the other area to make sure we don't have this weird variation, which ends up working out very well. And I like this nice circle canopy underneath toward the front because it gives us a lot of options. It's not very square, and it ends up working out very well for the purpose of this garden. Now with this garden, it's not supposed to be a lot like other ones where it's just plants. We're adding some man-made structures into this as well, along with two statues for this area. So we end up putting in this nice little water thing in the middle. I don't know what it's considered, but it's a water thing in my dictionary. And we end up circling it with some nice stone. I love this ancient East Asia zone because it works well for almost everything. And I kind of went a little bit overboard with it in this episode, but we're going to pretend that's not too much of an issue. We end up making it a small little fountain, nothing too special. We end up throwing up some nice lights, so we make this optimal for night, which was very important. And we also make sure that people can see our nice little decorations up against the wall in the back, which was, I think, came out very well, and it matches with our panda selection as of right now. We end up throwing two statues in because they're going to be little monuments toward this little garden here. So when you walk to the front of the park, or once you walk, let's say, from your car and you get through the park gates and you start seeing things, you see both a giant panda and a red panda, and it gives you a little bit of an influence about what you're going to see in the park when you start walking in. Now that being said, we don't have red pandas yet, so therefore we need to get red pandas at some point, which we will. I promise we will. We kind of have to. So this is a nice little garden. We end up throwing some flowers in the front, and then we throw in some green plants toward the back, some nice simple plants. We make it seem like it's a little overgrown but yet still maintained, and we give it a nice little variation. Now the reason why we don't use so many flowers is because we want to make sure that the people that visit this, assuming that they, are smart enough, we want to assume that the eye is drawn toward the two statues toward the front, the nice little decorations on the back, and then that's about it. The flowers give it a little bit of color, but that green shrubbery is meant to kind of break it up a little bit so that's not all you're paying attention to. And then it fills in that space, which was, the intention of this garden. You will see that I throw in some nice shrubs to break up the little viewing point in between the building and the habitat. I will let you know I changed this later, and I'm going to show you how. Because as you're walking by as a guest, you don't want to be able to see the background of how the zoo is operated. So We end up breaking it up, and it ends up working out pretty well. But beside that, we're going to move on to the other building nearby, which is going to have the same concept as the other one. It's just going to be least attractive. And I'll explain to you why that is also. Before we get any further, you will notice that there's a monorail in the background. I completely forgot about that. I've been kind of doing some concepts. I want this park to have a monorail that goes around the park for viewing. I think it would work out perfect for this park, especially since there's tigers and we can change the color of the carts for tigers, which I've already done. So we're going to be using that at some point. But we did a little bit of work off camera. All I really did was add the signs for the utilitarian purposes, so our staff know where to go, as if they didn't know already. It just gives it that extra look to make it, look like it's operational and real. But since we have this normal pathway and then we have a staff path right there, we need to figure out how to break it up a little bit so people understand that this is not where they're supposed to be going. So I end up throwing it in this canopy here, and it took me a minute to figure out the right color. I end up picking red, but guess what? I took it out anyway, because I didn't want the wooden pillars just to dig into the stone like that. So I thought that maybe, you know what, we can approach this differently, and it may work out better. So what I end up doing is I end up throwing the second garden in right by our building on the right. Our building on the right looks, it looks decently decorated, but it's not over the top where it's going to draw your eye too much. But let's say if your eye did draw over there, there's not much going on over there, which is the total intention for this design of what I came up with. Really, just this area is just a nice shaded tree that's being thrown in, and we just throw in some nice green plants. There's no flowers in this area, a little bit more dirty and just a little bit more overgrown. And the main reason why we do that is because we don't want people's eye to draw over there, quite simply. The only reason why we throw in the stone is because it would look a little bit weird if we only had stone on the left side of the staff path and then no stone on the right. So we use that as more of a fence for the people that are going to try to go over there. Let's say if they actually had the choice of doing that. But now the issue stands of what we're going to do to make sure people understand that this is an area where they're not supposed to go into. So therefore we end up sinking in a sign into the ground. And it's going to be a staff only sign that's sinking in. And I think I end up saying something like only staff are permitted. So it just wasn't staff only, and it being weird, there's a lot of space on the ground to put in more words. So I think I said only staff are permitted. That sounds about right. And then we use this nice wood in order to break up the stone a little bit, because there's a lot of stone in this. So I wanted to break that up a little bit, so we end up doing that by putting in some wood into the ground. And we're just going to assume that it's not going to be deteriorated by the weather. Unfortunately, it took a minute just to get this just right, because I guess the terrain is slightly uneven, or maybe just the way that I placed down the things weren't 100% flat to the ground, which could have been, entirely possible, but I'm not quite sure. Now, we threw in these shrubs earlier, right next to this habitat and right next to our left-hand side building. And it didn't work out very well because you could still see right straight through it. And I didn't want the bushes to clip through the building, so I didn't make it seem like it was overgrown. Therefore, I give this area more of a natural but man-made look of a little stone wall with some nice climbing plants to it. So we end up throwing in some nice little flowers up to it and a few little vines, or a few little like green leaf vine things. I don't know what they're considered. Something along the lines of that. We added those in to make it look better. And that helped break it up a little bit. I'm still not 100% sure if I liked that or not, but regardless, we still need to work on the staff center a little bit, which we will do later. In the next episode for the Shizen Hogo-Ku Zoo, I actually want to add in a nice little food court. And when I say little, I mean like an area for like at least 6 stores to be placed in, because I learned my lesson on the Katahdin Zoo where I only added in 3 and people are starving and thirsty all the time, and that place is overcrowded like hell. So we're gonna have to fix that one up. But beside that, I thank you guys for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you join our Discord, you will be given a shout out if you let me know that you've done both of those things. I will give you a shout out on upcoming videos. Hit that like button if you'd like to help support out the channel. I am a startup YouTube channel. I would highly appreciate it. Comments, suggestions, leave me down below. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Goodbye.